Okay. Yeah, we gotta talk about this, guys. We do. Because when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, there has been one name, one legend, who has consistently been linked to this Habs team ever since the team that he is currently on went through this sort of selling, retooling on the fly, not competitive state ever since the Pittsburgh Penguins stopped being a threat to deal with. Everybody's been talking about Sidney Crosby, and whether or not Sid the Kid could find himself a new National Hockey League home. Now, I will say what I have said the entire time, one more time in this audio commentary, that every time there is something to go over in regards to Sidney Crosby and the Montreal Canadiens, we always make videos about it because, whenever there's a new report, that opens the door for new discussion. And even though it's technically not something that we haven't talked about before, when somebody new comes along with something new, we just gotta keep on turning over those stones. So without further ado, let's head over onto the second most recent episode from Thursday, July 3rd, of Real Kipper and Born. The episode that we're referring to was the Ken Holland on Kings Editions Top 25 NHL Players episode, which will be linked in the description below. This episode has a very interesting true or false segment at the end, which, with the help of the AI machine, I transcribed here, which we can screenshot and put up on the screen. Did Nick Kypreos just reveal the timeline for Sidney Crosby's inevitable departure of Pittsburgh and his arrival in Montreal? Well, you be the judge. Let's dive into this right here. So, producer of the show, Sam McKee, goes out there and asks, true or false? The Montreal Canadiens make the playoffs for the second straight season. True or false? Justin Bourne says, if they hadn't made the moves they made this offseason, I just said false. But I'm going to say true. They went and got Noah Dobson, they went and got Zach Bolduc. McKee then says, people like that Bolduc a lot, eh? Yeah, Bourne replies. And then, unprompted, this is where Nick Kypreos replies saying, wait till they get Sidney Crosby after the Olympics. I'm sorry, what? Bourne replies. There's some laughter afterwards, and then McKee says, wow, true or false? Hey, true or false? Hold on, Justin Bourne replies. Sam McKee says, true or false, Sidney Crosby will play a game for a team other than the Penguins next season. Kypreos replies, I'm liking the odds a little better than maybe I did a few weeks ago. I don't know what's going on in Pitt, but something is going on in Pitt. Things are going on in Pitt. You know what's not going on? A lot of winning right now. Justin Bourne replies, wow, okay, everything's great, Sam McKee says. So, the Habs will make the playoffs. Kypreos says, yes. McKee replies, they'll make the playoffs with Sidney Crosby at center. Now hold on, Kypreos says one more time. I was talking odds before. Let's get back to Bet365 because I'm just talking odds here. So then, true or false, Sidney Crosby will play a game for a team other than the Penguins before next season. Bourne says I'm going to say false. Kypreos says I can't. I gotta say true now. Yeah. Love this segment. I love this segment, McKee replies. Yeah. Now, if you listen to the tone of the podcast, it is a very comedic kind of conversation that ensues in regards to Sidney Crosby and his potential departure, but just that idea as a whole. Sidney Crosby playing at the Olympic Games, potentially being a timeline as to when he will leave Pittsburgh, that is interesting to me. And I think a lot of that intrigue comes from the fact that we saw Sidney Crosby play just out of his mind bananas bonkers this previous season. He was good. He was a great player, 90-plus points. He did the thing, right? But he played so well at a level that we honestly might have not even expected at the Four Nations face-off. Yeah, sure, you could talk about the points. Okay, 5 points in 4 games, that's fine. Tied for the second place overall in point production on the tourney. But this guy was a man possessed. That might have been the best segment of hockey we have seen Sidney Crosby play in a long time, and he had 90 points this year. That was above and beyond what we expected out of him, and it was so amazing. This is why we started to see a little bit of let's just say Pittsburgh doubt seeping into the minds of the collective NHL fan base, saying, hey, wait a minute, this guy's playing so well for Team Canada, he still has that extra gear. Is he really going to want to stick around in Pittsburgh long term? Is he really going to tolerate losing? Will he tolerate the absence of that Four Nations face-off type environment that he could get if he gets traded to a different team? A team that is more competitive and a team that wants to rely on a guy like him. This is the thought process that is going over in Nick Kypreos' mind when he talks about the Sidney Crosby timeline at the Olympics. The thought process, I assume here, is if Sid the Kid goes over to Team Canada at the Olympics, which he will, he is good enough to do that, he will be named, and he'll probably be the captain one more time. If he goes over there, plays yet another super clutch tournament, he scores another golden goal, goodness forbid. If he wins his 3rd Olympic gold medal, and he gets another taste of that super competitive environment, maybe he faces off against Team USA in the finals, maybe Austin Matthews is there, Tkachuk is there, Jordan Binnington is there. Would it not be understandable if at that time, Sidney Crosby, if there was a time for him to ever request a trade, would that not be the time? I don't know. And I think that's the main idea as to why Kypreos highlighted the Olympics as the turning point for Sidney Crosby's Pittsburgh Penguins' future. It's not something that you can label out as guaranteed, but with this thought percolating in the back of a lot of NHL fans' minds now that it was mentioned on the freaking radio, now we gotta start talking. So, if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, what are your thoughts on the idea of Sidney Crosby potentially being a Hab? The folks on the broadcast talked about how you could have a center core of Suzuki, Crosby, Doc, and Evans, which would be just astounding, I would say. And if you wanted to just break down how that would look, I mean, it would look pretty good, but if you want to expand on any thoughts, then hey, be my guest to say whatever it is that you want. Do you think the Olympics is a realistic timeline here? The odds of Sidney Crosby leaving are like maybe 1 out of 100, but you know how they say some infinities are bigger than others. The amount of numbers in between 1 and 2 is uncountable in a way that is different from the countable numbers that are also infinitely long. Infinite amount of numbers, but an infinite amount of numbers between 1 and 2. Some infinities are bigger than the others. If you go over the 1% chance that Sidney Crosby does get traded, what percentage of that 1% is after the Olympics? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.